Did you know that more than 1.3 million Canadians are already struggling to pay rent, and nearly half of all renters say they're just one unexpected bill away from losing their home? If that sounds unbelievable, it gets even worse. Experts now warn that if current trends continue, Canada could face the largest homelessness surge in modern history by 2026. A crisis so big that even middle-class families, seniors, and young professionals could be pushed toward the edge. How did a country once known for stability and comfort reach a point where millions may no longer have a place to live? What changes are happening behind the scenes that almost nobody is talking about? And more importantly, could this really happen to ordinary people who are doing everything right? Stay with me because the 10 reasons behind this potential crisis will shock you, and the last one is the most disturbing of all.
Number 10. Rising evictions and lack of tenant protections. One of the most alarming signs of Canada's housing crisis is the rapid rise in evictions, and the truth is far more unsettling than most people realize. Across several provinces, eviction filings have jumped dramatically, with some regions reporting double-digit increases in just 1 year. Many families who have lived in the same home for years are suddenly receiving notices they never expected, not because they did anything wrong, but because landlords can often find legal loopholes to push tenants out and raise rents. And in many areas, tenant protections are weak, outdated, or slow to enforce, leaving renters vulnerable during the most stressful moments of their lives. What makes this even more disturbing is the growing trend of evictions, where landlords claim they need to renovate just to remove tenants and reset rents much higher. Families with children, seniors on fixed incomes, and newcomers trying to settle in Canada are finding themselves caught in a system that doesn't move fast enough to protect them. Even when tenants try to fight back, hearing delays, backlogs, and complicated procedures often mean the eviction goes through before they ever get a chance to defend their rights. When eviction rates rise and protections fail, homelessness becomes the next step, not because people are irresponsible, but because the system is stacked against those with fewer resources. And if this trend continues into 2026, analysts warn that hundreds of thousands could be pushed into unstable living conditions, marking one of the most painful housing failures in Canadian history. If this concerns you, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more updates, and comment below with your thoughts. Do you think Canada is ready for this crisis, or is the danger already here?
Number 9. Provincial housing policies creating uneven pressures. One of the most overlooked reasons millions of Canadians may face homelessness by 2026 is the sharp divide created by provincial housing policies. While Canada is one country, each province runs its own housing system, its own zoning rules, approval timelines, rent controls, and development strategies. This creates uneven pressure points, where some provinces are unintentionally making the crisis far worse than others. In places where zoning laws remain restrictive or city councils take years to approve new projects, housing supply never catches up to demand. Alberta may approve thousands of units in months, while Ontario or British Columbia can take years for the same process, causing massive supply bottlenecks. Even policies designed to protect communities often end up slowing development. Height limits, single-family zoning, heritage restrictions, and lengthy consultation periods may sound good on paper, but they severely limit how quickly new homes can be built. And because Canada's population is growing faster than at any time in its modern history, slow-moving provinces are being hit with overwhelming pressure. The result is predictable: higher rents, longer waitlists, more bidding wars, and more people pushed toward the margins. Meanwhile, provinces with limited rent control allow landlords to raise prices sharply between tenants, making it easier for evictions and harder for families to secure long-term stability. Others still lack strong affordability requirements for developers, meaning many new builds are luxury units that everyday Canadians can't afford. These uneven rules create a national patchwork where opportunity depends entirely on where you live, and millions who can't move provinces or change cities get stuck in the most expensive, unstable markets. If these provincial differences continue without coordination, analysts warn that Canada may face regional homelessness spikes unlike anything seen before. with certain provinces collapsing under housing pressure much faster than others. Number 8. Stagnant wages and rising cost of living. Another powerful force pushing Canadians toward potential homelessness by 2026 is the widening gap between stagnant wages and the relentless rise in the cost of living. For years, paychecks across Canada have barely moved, even as prices for almost everything have surged. The average worker is earning roughly the same as they did years ago, but the cost of essentials, housing, food, transportation, utilities, and healthcare has climbed at rates that far outpace income growth. This creates a financial squeeze so tight that millions of families now live in a constant state of compromise, cutting meals, skipping savings, delaying bills, and choosing between survival priorities. The most painful part is that this gap grows silently. People may feel like they're working harder than ever, yet somehow sinking deeper. Gas prices fluctuate, grocery bills hit record levels, and utility costs continue to rise, often with no warning. Meanwhile, wages remain stuck, raises are minimal, and many workers rely on side jobs just to keep from falling behind. For those in low-income or hourly positions, the situation is even more severe. A single unexpected expense can wipe out what little stability they have. This growing imbalance also destroys financial resilience. 10 years ago, many families had a buffer, savings, credit, or a manageable emergency fund. Today, surveys show that a significant portion of Canadians have less than $200 of disposable income after essential monthly expenses. When wages fail to keep up with inflation, even small increases in rent or mortgage payments can push people to the point where homelessness becomes a very real threat. If this pattern continues into 2026, experts warn that millions of Canadians, especially young families, newcomers, and single-income households, may simply no longer earn enough to afford a stable home, no matter how hard they work. Number 7. Mortgage renewals triggering a new crisis. One of the most frightening and least understood threats to Canada's housing stability is the massive wave of mortgage renewals coming in 2025 and 2026. Millions of homeowners who locked in low interest rates years ago are now facing renewals at dramatically higher rates, sometimes 2 to 3 times higher than what they originally paid. This shift is not just uncomfortable, it is financially devastating. Families who once managed manageable monthly payments are now being told their new payments could increase by hundreds or even thousands of dollars per month, an impossible burden for many households already stretched thin. The danger doesn't stop at rising payments. Many homeowners may also find it harder to qualify for renewal because of stricter mortgage stress tests and lending rules. Banks now assess whether a borrower can handle even higher hypothetical rates, meaning families who could afford their homes under previous rules may suddenly be considered too risky. This puts them at risk of being pushed towards selling their homes, often under pressure, often below market value. For those with variable rate mortgages, the crisis arrived even sooner, as their payments have already climbed sharply, draining savings and wiping out emergency funds. Experts warned that this upcoming renewal wave could trigger a chain reaction: forced sales increasing supply, falling home values, financial stress rising, and families sliding into instability. Renters aren't safe either. Many landlords facing higher mortgage costs pass those increases directly to tenants, driving rents even higher. The deeper issue is that Canada built a generation of homeowners around ultra-low rates that were never meant to last. Now that the era of cheap borrowing is over, the bill is coming due, and millions may find themselves unable to meet it. If renewal shocks continue at this pace, 2026 could mark one of the most significant housing affordability crises in Canadian history, affecting both owners and renters alike.
Number 6. Rising homelessness among seniors. One of the most heartbreaking and rapidly growing dimensions of Canada's housing crisis is the sharp rise in homelessness among seniors. This is a group that spent decades working, raising families, and contributing to society. Yet today, many are finding themselves priced out of the very communities they helped build. The core issue is painfully simple. Fixed incomes do not rise, but the cost of living does. Most seniors rely on pensions, old age security, or small savings that were once enough to live modestly. But as rent, groceries, medication, and utility costs soar, Many older Canadians are discovering that their limited income no longer covers even the basics. The situation becomes even more dire for those renting. Seniors living in private rentals face annual increases that quickly outpace their fixed monthly income. Some have lived in the same home for 10 or 20 years, only to be hit with rent hikes they cannot absorb. Others encounter run evictions, where landlords use renovations as a legal excuse to remove long-term tenants and charge much higher rents. Without affordable alternatives, seniors are left with few choices: downsize drastically, move far from family and medical support, or face homelessness. Physical vulnerabilities make the crisis even worse. Seniors often deal with mobility issues, chronic illnesses, and limited access to transportation. Losing stable housing isn't just emotionally devastating, it can be life-threatening. Shelters are not equipped to handle elderly medical needs, and transitional housing options for seniors are severely limited across most provinces. Researchers warn that the senior homelessness rate in Canada could double by 2026 if costs continue rising at the current pace. As the population ages, more seniors will reach retirement with mortgages, debt, or insufficient savings, placing them at high risk of displacement. Without targeted support and affordable housing solutions, Canada could witness a silent wave of elderly Canadians losing their homes, one of the most tragic outcomes of the crisis.
Number 5. Short-term rentals removing homes from the long-term market. A major but often underestimated force driving Canada's housing crisis is the explosive growth of short-term rentals, especially through platforms like Airbnb and VRBO. What started as a simple way for homeowners to earn a little extra income has now transformed into a powerful market-shifting force, one that is quietly removing tens of thousands of homes from the long-term rental market. In some major cities, entire apartment buildings have effectively turned into unofficial hotels, leaving fewer affordable units available for families who need permanent housing. The impact is deeper than most people realize. When investors convert long-term rentals into short-term vacation units, the supply of available housing for locals shrinks dramatically, and basic economics takes over. When supply drops, prices rise. Research from several Canadian cities shows that neighborhoods with high short-term rental density experience noticeably higher rents and housing prices. This means families who have lived in the same community for years suddenly find themselves priced out, not because the area improved, but because the housing stock shifted toward tourists instead of residents. Short-term rentals also create volatility. Unlike traditional leases, these units can disappear from the market overnight. Thousands of potential long-term homes remain locked behind nightly rates, seasonal bookings, and investor profits. And because the returns from short-term rentals are significantly higher than regular rent, many property owners choose the more profitable route, even if it worsens the local housing shortage. In cities like Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal, this has led to neighborhoods where students, workers, and families can't find an affordable long-term place to live, while right next door, empty units sit waiting for the next weekend traveler. If this trend continues without strong regulation, Canada could lose an enormous portion of its potential rental housing, pushing even more people toward overcrowding, displacement, and homelessness by 2026.
Number 4. Record immigration levels without matching housing supply. Canada is welcoming immigrants at record levels, and while immigration is essential for economic growth, innovation, and long-term stability, it has also created a housing pressure that the country simply wasn't prepared for. Over the past few years, Canada's population has grown faster than at any point in modern history, yet the housing supply has not kept pace. This creates a widening gap where demand skyrockets while available homes remain limited, pushing prices higher and making competition for rentals more intense than ever. Families searching for a place to live suddenly find themselves in bidding wars, not just for buying homes, but even for renting simple basement units. The core issue is not immigration itself, it is the lack of coordinated planning. Provinces and cities were already struggling with shortages long before population growth accelerated. When hundreds of thousands of new residents arrive each year, all needing housing, transportation, healthcare, and education, the strain becomes immediate and visible.
Renters feel the pressure first. More people competing for fewer units drives rent upward at a pace many Canadians no longer can keep up with. This is especially true for international students and new immigrants who often start with limited income and savings. Meanwhile, construction cannot catch up. Developers face labor shortages, high interest rates, rising material costs, and slow approval processes. Even when new units are built, many are high-cost condos rather than affordable housing. As a result, newcomers and existing residents end up in the same overcrowded market, fighting for the same small pool of available homes. If population growth continues at this speed without a parallel surge in housing construction, analysts warn that by 2026, the supply gap could reach crisis levels, making homelessness a risk not only for vulnerable groups, but for ordinary working families across the country.
Number 3. Soaring interest rates pushing families to the edge. One of the most immediate and painful shocks hitting Canadian households is the surge in interest rates, a change that has quietly pushed millions of families to the financial brink. For most of the last decade, Canadians became used to historically low borrowing costs. Mortgages were affordable, lines of credit were manageable, and families could build a life around predictable monthly payments. But when interest rates skyrocketed, everything changed almost overnight. Those low-rate mortgages reset into high-rate burdens, and what was once a stable home now feels like a looming threat. Homeowners with variable-rate mortgages felt the impact first: sudden payment increases, shrinking savings, and growing anxiety. Many saw their monthly costs rise by hundreds or even thousands of dollars, a jump that no ordinary household can easily absorb. Fixed-rate borrowers are next, facing renewal terms far more expensive than anything they budgeted for. For families already dealing with inflation, rising grocery prices, and stagnant wages, these new mortgage costs are simply unsustainable. But the ripple effect extends beyond homeowners. Landlords facing increased mortgage payments often pass those costs directly to tenants, pushing rental prices to record highs across Canada. Even people who have never owned property are being forced to bear the weight of rising interest rates. Credit card interest, personal loan costs, small business loans, everything rises together, trapping households in a cycle of debt and diminishing stability. Financial experts warn that this interest rate environment could trigger a wave of forced sales, defaults, and evictions, especially as more borrowers reach their renewal dates in 2025 and 2026. For many families, the fear is not losing luxury, it's losing the roof over their heads. If rates remain high or climb further, millions could be pushed toward instability, marking one of the most significant housing threats Canada has ever faced.
Number 2. Canada's severe housing shortage. Canada's housing crisis cannot be understood without recognizing the depth of its severe housing shortage, a problem that has been building slowly for decades but is now exploding into full view. Experts estimate that Canada needs millions of additional homes just to meet current demand, not future growth. Yet the construction of new housing has fallen dramatically behind population increases, leaving a widening gap that is pushing prices upward and squeezing families into overcrowded or unstable living conditions. This shortage isn't just about numbers, it's about the reality that many cities simply do not have enough places for people to live, no matter how much they're willing to pay. The causes run deep. Slow approval processes mean that building a single project can take years, delaying much-needed supply. Rising construction costs, labor shortages, and expensive land prices make it even harder for developers to build affordable units. And when new homes are completed, many are high-end condos or luxury rentals, far beyond the budgets of ordinary Canadians. As a result, the affordable housing stock remains frozen while demand keeps rising, leaving young families, newcomers, students, and low-income households trapped in competitive, overpriced markets. This shortage also creates intense pressure on the rental sector. With fewer new purpose-built rentals available, tenants are forced into bidding wars for spaces that used to be considered basic, not premium. Wait lists for subsidized housing stretch for years, and families often settle for cramped or unsafe units simply because they have no other choice. If this supply drought continues, Canada could face a dangerous tipping point by 2026, where even middle-class households struggle to find stable housing. A shortage this severe doesn't just raise prices, it reshapes the entire housing system, pushing millions closer to homelessness with every passing year.
Number 1. Exploding housing prices outpacing income growth. Canada's housing market has reached a point where prices are rising far faster than the incomes needed to afford them, creating one of the most dangerous affordability gaps in the country's history. Over the past decade, home prices in many cities have doubled or even tripled, while wages have grown only a fraction of that. This widening divide is not just an economic issue, it's a structural barrier that pushes millions of Canadians closer to housing insecurity every year. Even households earning stable, full-time incomes now find themselves unable to qualify for mortgages or even afford rising rents. It's a crisis where working harder no longer translates into stability. The mathematics behind the problem are brutal. When home prices jump by hundreds of thousands of dollars, while annual incomes rise by only a few thousand, the dream of home ownership becomes unreachable for most. Down payments become impossible to save. Mortgage approvals become harder to secure. And renters remain stuck in a cycle where they can never catch up because every year rent increases swallow more of their income. Young Canadians in particular face an unprecedented challenge, entering a market already far out of reach with no realistic path to ownership. The problem intensifies when combined with inflation and interest rates. Even those who stretch their finances to buy a home face monthly payments that absorb more than 40 to 60% of their income, levels considered dangerously high by financial experts. Meanwhile, renters are not spared. Landlords adjust prices based on market value, meaning even modest apartments now command premium rates. If this trend continues unchecked, analysts warn that exploding prices could force millions into unstable housing situations by 2026. It's not that Canadians are earning less, it's that housing has become outrunning income at a pace no household can survive, pushing the country toward a historic affordability breaking point. Canada's housing crisis is no longer a distant warning, it's unfolding right now, and the signs are everywhere. From soaring prices to overwhelmed families, every trend points to a future where millions may struggle to keep a stable roof over their heads by 2026. But awareness is the first step toward change. So tell me in the comments, which part of this crisis shocked you the most? If you found this video valuable, please like, subscribe, and share to support our channel. And don't forget to watch our previous video for even deeper insights. It's just one click away.